So in order to learn how to create watercolors, of course, you need to understand the consistencies of watercolor pigments. Particularly, I'm going to be discussing here on how to control the watercolor pigment as to the ratio. So I'm first doing the most diluted pigment consistency, which is that of tea. You can see it's more of water than pigment. I recommend that you first use a ratio of 2:1, 2 being the water and 1 being the pigment, but you may want to dilute that further, probably 3:1. And I'm drying my brush just to pick up the excess water. And of course, you could use gravity to rotate around and distribute the pigment evenly. So it's normal to have this sort of texture onto the watercolor paper, which is cold press that I'm using here, 300 grams per square meter. Now I'm going for the consistency of milk here. I've added a bit more pigment to the mixture. So notice that I'm loading up my brush, which is a sable brush, which is a natural hair brush. So natural hair holds more water than nylon. So I'm pushing this a bit more. Okay, so I'm using gravity here just to assist me a bit, but not too much. Now to the last part, of course, then use gravity a bit to move the pigment. The next consistency would be cream. So I've added a bit more. So as you go on throughout these consistencies, you add a bit more. Of course, judge accordingly. So we're pushing and I'm doing that slight S motion. So I'm drying up my brush first if I'm going to have to lift up some of the excess, and that drains up a bit of that corner there. And use gravity assist, of course, to sort of like evenly spread. And for the last part, of course, I'm going to be adding a bit more pigment than water to the ratio. And this would be the honey consistency. It's a bit harder to control, of course. The thickness of the pigment is pretty dense and it's hard to spread it. Try to do your best if you're going to this consistency. Now, I discourage anyone from using masking tape in order to execute these because it's going to make a mess, and at the same time, it might ruin the paper if you take them off, and some of the fibers would come along with the masking tape. And I guess this exercise in consistency ends here. You could do another row in order to perfect these consistencies.